The film starts with a girl named Enola Holmes, who is riding her bicycle and introducing herself to the viewers. She states that her name is Alone, spelled backward, but she is never alone, as she spends most of her time with her mother Eudora, in their home of Ferndale Hall. Her mother has always been keen on word games, so she insisted on naming her Enola. It is also revealed that, after her father passed and her two older brothers left home, Enola grew up learning from Eudora how to read, study science, and practice fencing and archery, among other things. She also recalls walking in on Eudora in a secret meeting that she tried to keep from Enola. She explains that, on the morning of her 16th birthday, Enola awoke to discover that Eudora was missing, having left overnight. All she left behind for Enola were several gifts, including a book called The Language of Flowers. Back in the present, Enola tells the audience that a week has passed since her mother's disappearance, and she is on her way to the train station to reunite with her older brothers, the legendary detective Sherlock Holmes, and the eldest, Mycroft, a rich aristocrat who works for the government, to figure out what happened to their mother. Upon their arrival, the brothers are surprised to see their little sister for the first time in ages. Mycroft is horrified that Enola is out in public without a hat or gloves, and dirty from having fallen off her bike on the way to the station. He is further annoyed to find that Enola has not brought the carriage he has been paying for, confusing Enola, as they do not own a carriage. Then, Sherlock hires one to take them to Ferndale. When they return to Ferndale Hall, Mycroft is stunned to find that Enola has not received a more traditional upbringing for young women, especially learning that Enola was homeschooled by their mother, instead of getting a formal education. Sherlock surveys the place to find clues about Eudora's disappearance, believing that she left of her own accord, as opposed to being kidnapped. Mycroft thinks Enola needs to be sent to a finishing school, so he contacts Miss Harrison to come and get Enola. Miss Harrison is a strict and unkind person, who believes that she must mold Enola into the image of a proper young woman. Enola argues with Mycroft over the decision, but even Sherlock cannot do anything to prevent it. Enola retreats to the woods outside to sketch, where Sherlock goes to speak with her. He brings up a little pinecone that she kept as a pet, and dragged around everywhere, called Dash. She asks him why he was absent from home for so long, or never wrote back, even saying that she kept clippings of all his cases. Sherlock says he leads a busy life, but he sees Eudora's vanishing as an interesting mystery to be solved, and tells Enola to look for what's already in front of her. That night, Enola looks into the clues Eudora left her in her gifts. She finds a piece of paper that begins with "alone," meaning it's a message specifically for her. It reads, backward, Enola, look in my chrysanthemums. Enola goes to find Eudora's flower paintings and finds an envelope with money, and a message that says, our future is up to us. She remembers Eudora telling her that she can take two paths, the one she makes for herself, or the one others choose for her. Enola decides to take the case upon herself and sneaks out of Ferndale Hall, dressed as a boy. She leaves a rag doll in her bed, which Mycroft finds the next morning when getting ready to send her to Miss Harrison's. Enola goes to the train station and sees a woman looking for her son. When she gets to her train car, Enola sees a young man emerging from a luggage bag overhead. He introduces himself as Viscount Tewkesbury, Marquis of Bassleweather. He asks her to help hide him, but she knows someone is looking for him, and orders him to leave. It turns out that it was his own mother, plus his uncle and grandmother, looking for him at the station. Tewkesbury ultimately leaves, but soon after, the man looking for him, an assassin named Linthorn, spots him and pursues him. Although Enola tries to make her way out, she turns back around after realizing Tewkesbury is in real danger. Linthorn attacks Tewkesbury and tries to throw him off the train, but Enola hits him with a crowbar and rescues the Marquis. The two then jump off the train to escape Linthorn. Enola and Tewkesbury wander for a while, until they are out of sight and can stop to rest for the night. They discuss their deceased fathers, and why they ran away from home. Tewkesbury was set to take his seat in the House of Lords and would vote to move the country forward, but he got nervous and chose to run away, after a terrifying experience when a falling branch almost took his life. Then, Enola tells him of her decision to run away rather than be sent to Miss Harrison's. After sharing their stories, Tewkesbury proposes they stick together in London. However, Enola decides that once they get to London, they will go their separate ways. Once in London, Enola bids Tewkesbury farewell, and using the money Eudora left for her, she disguises herself as a well-bred lady, and finds a boarding house to stay at. Meanwhile, Sherlock and Mycroft make plans to locate Enola. Then, Sherlock reads about a disturbance on the train and figures his sister was involved. Meanwhile, Enola continues her search for her mother by trying to leave ciphers in the newspapers she frequently reads, so that she may also find her. Enola later tracks down the correspondent her mother often wrote to, Ethel, who runs jiu-jitsu classes for women above her tea shop, and used to teach Enola self-defense. She tells Enola that Eudora does not want to be found and has secret work to do in London, and Enola remembers her as one of the women at Eudora's secret meeting. Enola finds fireworks in Ethel's office after she returns to her students, and recalls hearing coded words in their conversation at the meeting. Decoding them as locations, she surmises that they are hiding something at the docks and goes to investigate. Once there, Enola finds a warehouse bearing a purple ribbon, the same ribbon as was on her birthday gift from her mother. Sneaking in, she finds great quantities of fireworks, gunpowder, and other explosives. She also finds posters for suffragette rallies and is horrified to find full-fledged bombs hidden away. Then, she questions whether she should continue her attempts to find her mother, as it seems she is involved in dangerous activities. As she goes to leave the docks, Enola is ambushed by Linthorn, who interrogates her about Tewkesbury's location and attempts to drown her in a water trough, but Enola fights back and escapes his clutches, after setting off some explosives. She then resolves to hold off on finding Eudora, and instead turns her attention to finding and protecting Tewkesbury, as she cannot help but feel some responsibility for his care. Enola once again disguises herself as a widow, to avoid drawing attention to herself, and arrives at Tewkesbury's estate to help his family find him. Tewkesbury's mother, uncle, and grandmother are all skeptical of Enola's claim of being a lady detective, so they try to send her away, but she convinces them by saying she is working for Sherlock. This piques their interest, though Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard enters and says that Sherlock always works alone. Tewkesbury's uncle, Sir Wimbrel, sends them both away, stating that they do not need more help. Enola then swaps clothes with a gardener. It turns out that Mycroft had hired Lestrade to search for Enola, but going by Mycroft's description of a scrappy young woman with no poise, Lestrade was fooled by Enola's disguise. Lestrade meets with Mycroft and tells him of May Beatrice Poissy, who matches the description of Enola. Mycroft confirms she is his sister and tells Lestrade to find her. Then, Sherlock pays Edith a visit in his search for his mother and sister, and while he tries to convince her on the grounds that Mycroft would come after her assets, Edith calls Sherlock out on his obsession with his job and lack of attention given to his family, especially Enola. Meanwhile, Enola comes across Tewkesbury's treehouse, near the area where a large branch had almost fallen on him. She goes through his belongings and sees that Tewkesbury had been planning his escape for a while, as well as some flowers that Enola recognizes and takes as a sign. While she is investigating, she is found by Tewkesbury's grandmother, the Dowager, who recognizes the gardener's clothes on her, but Enola still convinces her she is the widow. As they walk, the Dowager tells her how she feels that England should stay as it is, per the upcoming vote among the lords. Then, Enola goes to a flower market and finds Tewkesbury selling flowers among the crowded stalls. She tells him he is still in danger and takes him back to her lodgings house, where Tewkesbury finds a pile of newspapers. Enola explains how her mother left her, and she is waiting for a response to the message she sent her. They bond over both having lost their fathers, and how the rest of the people in their lives don't seem to want them. Enola tells Tewkesbury that despite his family being wealthy enough to send a detective to find him, someone in his family sent a murderer instead. Enola says that she is sure his father was actually murdered, and that whoever did it must want him to be assassinated for the same reason. She also informs him of her findings at Basilweather, and that the branch that nearly ended him had been intentionally cut. Suddenly, they are ambushed by Lestrade, and run away after Enola brains him with a tea kettle. Unfortunately, Enola knows that they can't both get away, so she lets Tewkesbury go and is caught by Lestrade. She is turned over to Mycroft, who confiscates the money her mother gave her and takes her to Miss Harrison's finishing school for young ladies. She is kept locked in her room in between lessons, and tries to remain defiant of the headmistress, though her spirits begin to dwindle. Later, Enola is told that her brother has come to visit her, and she is relieved to see that it is Sherlock. She checks his newspaper for a possible message and is angry about her situation. But Sherlock encourages her to take the lessons to heart, as they may come in handy in future cases. Then, she asks him about Eudora, and he says he has tracked her trail and found the docks, one step behind Enola's confrontation with Lindhorn, and they discuss the bombs found there. However, she accuses him of helping Mycroft catch her, and seeing her only as a case, which he denies, and admits that he came because he cares about her. Then, he asks her about the Tewkesbury case, having deduced that she was with the boy on the train. He tells her that he is impressed with her detective work, and asks if she has solved the mystery yet. He gives her some advice, detective to detective, and also gives her Dash, the pinecone dog, having found it among Eudora's things, telling Enola that he and Eudora both find her extraordinary. After Sherlock leaves, Enola looks through the paper, and finds that the Reform Bill is still tied in the House of Lords, and another article about the still missing Marquis. She then receives a supposed package from Mycroft, but it is really Tewkesbury sneaking in, having remembered that Enola told him she was being sent there. Enola is overjoyed to see him and is relieved that he is all right. He intends to get her out the same way he came in, but Enola alters the plan to get around Miss Harrison's watchful eye. They sneak out and steal Miss Harrison's car. The two head to Basilweather, as Enola has determined that Tewkesbury's uncle, Sir Wimbrel, must be the culprit, for he must have murdered his brother and is now trying to take out his nephew to succeed them and vote against their favors. They sneak into Tewkesbury's home at night to find it apparently empty, but Lindhorn appears and attacks them. He almost strangles Tewkesbury, but Enola gathers her strength and pulls off a previously hard move, the corkscrew, to subdue Lindhorn and bring him down, causing him to smash his head against a statuette. The Dowager then emerges with a rifle, revealing herself as the mastermind behind the assassination plot. She ordered her own son's murder, and fired at Tewkesbury, so that they would not vote for the Reform Bill. Tewkesbury survives, having been wearing a chest plate, and the Dowager is exposed for her villainy. Tewkesbury rises and tells the Dowager her time is over. Then, Sherlock arrives at Scotland Yard and tells Lestrade to arrest the Dowager, as she is trying to assassinate the Marquis, and had his father murdered. He explains that Sir Wimbrel was away at war and couldn't have done it, but that the Dowager wanted him to stand against the Reform Bill and any other such changes, as the Viscount and his father before him would have voted in favor. Lestrade asks how he came to that conclusion, and after Sherlock gives his analysis, Lestrade comments that Enola solved it first. Sherlock leaves, chuckling to himself. Afterward, Tewkesbury accepts his new position in the House of Lords, and gets ready to cast his vote. Enola sees him one last time to say goodbye. As she goes home, she finds the day's paper and comes across a hidden message that was apparently from Eudora, telling her to meet at the Royal Academy, which Enola finds suspicious, given that place's exclusion of women, so she believes Sherlock is behind this. Sure enough, he and Mycroft are there waiting for her, and she never shows. Sherlock says he would like to take her as his ward. It is also noted that Tewkesbury's vote helped lean in favor of the Reform Bill. Before the two leave, Sherlock finds that Enola left Dash on a nearby statue for him. He walks past her as she is in disguise, and he seemingly knows it's her, leaving Dash there with her. Enola goes to her lodging house and finds Eudora there in her room. Although she is only going to be there briefly, she tells Enola she is sorry for leaving abruptly, but she explains that she had to leave to keep Enola safe, so that she would not have to get involved in her personal activities. Eudora also tells her daughter how proud she is of how she turned out. They embrace before parting ways again. In the end, Enola speaks to the audience one last time, saying that, just like her mother and brothers, she is going to chart her own path as a detective and finder of lost souls. She then goes for a bike ride around London, saying that, "Our future is up to us."